Right. Okay, doke. So, on the chair. Make yourself comfortable in your chair as always. Just giving a few moments to consider very simply your posture. And this is both to obviously get your posture right, which is always going to be important, but also as the start of that process of just collecting your attention a little bit. So sit forwards on your chair if you can do that without straining in your back. And tilt forward slightly, have your feet flat on the floor. Just feel that sort of 30% of your weight in your feet. A couple of slow, gentle breaths. To be aware of the shape within your body. Just have a sense of the bones of your skeleton and the surrounding area, the tissue surrounding the skeleton. Supporting you, and the image of often used as like a mannequin in a shop window, clothes are displayed. Supported from within. The upper part of your body obviously supported by the chair, but also by your feet and legs. And the front of your upper body supported by your back. Head resting nicely on top of your spine. Rubbing your hands together. And then tapping over your face. And then over your head and neck. Onto one shoulder and your arm. The other side. Upper part of your chest. Then lightly on your belly. And then as always, these tapping exercises are really useful. Great thing to do first thing in the morning, especially this chilly morning, is to sort of get you going. But then sit back in your chair into a reclining position with your feet out a little, so that you can really feel your weight dropping back. And this is the feeling in the body that we're looking for in the upright stances. We talk about the upper body sitting into our hips. But also you can think of that sense of sort of almost melting, almost cat-like into the chair. And I mentioned earlier that the skeleton and that stronger sense of feeling within your body. And in the same way, when you're upright, the sort of soft tissue and things like your rib cage and the big muscles of your back and shoulders sink in, have a bit of sinking in to that area. These are all things that help to get us away from a kind of unconscious attitude that we have to somehow strain to hold ourselves upright. We want to use the natural structures of our bodies to support us, not create tightness and create tension. But just give yourself a few moments in this position. Notice the characteristics that are most prominent for you. The feelings, the sensations in your body you're going to look for in the upright position. Maybe take a couple of slow, gentle breaths if that suits you. See how the breathing feels for us. So then when we come back to the upright position, we have an idea of what we're looking for, what we're after. And just going through the various parts of the body to both loosen them up, of course, and most of the joints and things, just to mobilize them a little bit. But also, again, as a way of very gently gathering our attention. So starting with your head, and as you turn, just be aware of how much space there is for movement. One of the characteristics of these postures for me is very much the sense of spaciousness within the body. And we allow the movement, the flow, to fill that space, but not to strain against the edges of it. Like water, when it flows down a hill, flows through the soil, flows around obstructions, but will also, over a period of time, gradually dissolve and erode the sides, so the space will naturally get bigger. And you really don't want to do this one too hard because you don't want to put pressure on the side of your neck. And then hands in front of your shoulders, circle your elbows back. One label given to some of the big joints in the body, like the shoulders and hips, is energy gates. That they're almost like pinch points. If you've got a door into your house or a gate into your garden, if they get stuck, it stops all movement. So the joints are important, of course, for all sorts of reasons. Going forwards again, feel what's happening in your chest and your upper back as you do this. You should feel almost as though your shoulders and upper back are being very gently massaged. Hands dropping down and then winding your arms around. Imagine there's a round pillar here and you're just sliding the palms of your hands around that pillar. And then raise your hands up, still working from your shoulders, trying to get your fingers to go around as much as possible in a full circle, but don't push against your wrists. Your wrists are a bit stiff. Remember, we're looking to create space, if you like that. And then back the other way. And as we do the exercises again with a sense of attention, a sense of intention, just recognize that this has an outcome of beginning to just let your thoughts settle a little bit. They'll settle and then take off again and you'll get easily distracted. But just rest your hand. Ease forwards and push back. I like the image of setting the jar of muddy water on a table. And I thoughts are like the mud dissolved in the water. It's all over the place. You can't see very much, but leave it on the table for long enough and the mud settles and the water's clearer. And this is right at the heart of Tai Chi. I won't say it's the only thing about Tai Chi that's important, of course, very much a movement. And we do look to refine posture, movement. That's an ongoing process. But it's hard to do that if you can't be aware of what you're doing. But it's also of great benefit to our minds to get that sense of what we describe in Tai Chi, of the stillness within the movement. For this one, from the side, I'm just rocking on the bones at the base of the pelvis. Can't do it very well. I'm kind of half off the chair actually. It's the whole of your upper body tilting forwards, using your feet to push yourself back, and a certain amount of a pull from the hips. Gravity is pulling on your hips, but gravity helps you to come back up to the upright position. But almost upright, you're still tilted slightly forwards. Turning the center of your body, and now you start to get more of your weight going into one leg. So just be careful you're not twisting up your back. And as you get used to this, try and make the distinction between the leg that's taken the majority of your weight, the full leg, and the empty leg. Turn in the other direction. This all comes from your hips and your pelvis. waist, that area of the body. And then just by rolling your pelvis around gently, drawing your head, drawing your shoulders around in a small circle, a circle that initially at least should fit within the square, which your feet and your hips form the corners of the square. And so the circle is within that. As you settle down more, as you loosen up and warm up, you may find that you can go a little bit further, but it's not a competition to see who can go the furthest. You don't want to be right out here because now you're struggling against the pull of gravity. Go back the other way. So the movement in your spine, again, a kind of massaging quality around the spine, around your back. So you come back to this position where, again, 70% of your weight is in your hips. You don't want all the weight back because then there's a tendency to be pulled backwards. So you go forwards just a little bit, 30% of your weight in your feet. So although I talk about this as being upright, it's not conventionally upright, but it's okay to be slightly forward here because you've still got your feet giving support. Now, just raise one heel, push the foot out, put the heel down, lower the toes. And again, maybe give a little bit of a push gently into the floor. Don't straighten up your knee completely. And then try on the other side, so your weight will shift across slightly. Just take time out to notice this very simple movement, but one which requires a lot of coordination. Mostly comes naturally to us. And then alternating from side to side. Feel how your body works this and feel that slight shift of your weight across what's happening in your pelvis and your hips and your shoulders as you do this. One more on each side. And then just come back to your favored sitting position. If you're not comfortable, a long way forwards, as I am at the moment. If you're feeling it stiffening your back, then do sit back. If I feel my back's going to get stiff, then I will do that. So find a position where you feel you can maintain those feelings of spaciousness, openness within your body, a lack of strain. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Now let your hands drop down to your sides. Turn your hand palm forwards again. The same movement we did before in the arms, but now combined with the transfer of your weight. So overall, your arms are simply rotating, they're hanging from your shoulders. This is a good exercise to get a sense for how much of a contribution things like the movement of your weight, maybe other things as well. Maybe if you noticed it, the slight changes in your chest and your upper back, expanding and contracting alternately, how much they begin to contribute to the overall sense of movement. So your arms aren't having to do too much. Just feel the movement of the muscles, and again, joints like your elbows, shoulders, wrists. And as you do this, and as the movements get a little bit more complex for arms, try and just preserve some of these qualities. This time, keeping your hands facing backwards, change into fisherman castanet. And now just letting your arms swing through. You're pulling on your arms mostly. You sit back, and it's not until you get back into your hip that the arm swings through. I can't do both arms with the back of the chair. I go forward, notice my hand behind, and it just swings through. Then a natural smooth curve up. We're not trying to lift the hands at all. Again, it's not just the weight moving in your arms, there's a whole body in between those areas. So just try and keep a sense of alertness to small changes in your body. And as you get more experience, of course, when we bring our intent to the movement, it's those small changes that we're most likely to be able to influence. Through imagery, through simple awareness, maybe through something a bit more kind of like definite, like I want to do this with my shoulder, not that, or something like that. These are the little kind of skills, I suppose you could call them, that we build. Now imagine the ball in front of you, and this time as you come back, your arms are resting on the ball, so they're pulled over, pulling the ball in towards you. You're not trying to lift your arms. So your hands come up quite naturally without straining in your shoulders. Elbows are dropped down slightly. Get a little bit more experience, you begin to recognize as this happens, what I feel is an expansion in the belly, solar plexus, and chest, like a wave coming up underneath my arm. And so, without actually having to deliberately move the arms, so long as I'm not getting in the way of that movement by straining in my shoulders or something, I'm very much able to feel that my arms are beginning to move just that little bit more. So again, we start to get a sense of that spaciousness within our body, gradually beginning to enlarge. You may notice here, you may go, oh, maybe a bit stiff in your back. Maybe if you sink your hips a bit, drop your shoulders a bit. Just try and soften in your back. You can begin to clear that blockage. Just imagine the movement itself again, like water, eroding the block. And then this time, turning your hands palm in, pigeon spread this way. Chest opening and then closing, so that your rib cage, the sternum at the center of it, was almost like a set of folding doors. It can fold in on itself like this and then open out. So the sternum becomes the hinge. In your upper back, the opposite way around, the shoulder blades seem to slide together and then get drawn apart. And you may find with the movement like this, as you come back with that expansion in the front of your body, that it's possible just to take a slightly deeper in-breath. So don't labor that. If it's comfortable, that's fine. If it doesn't feel comfortable, just allow your body to breathe naturally. And then push and wave, your hands staying in front of your hips, but your elbows still going out a little bit. Press forwards. Again from the side. Here, as my elbow comes in, notice the shape of my arm there, and the movement forwards pushes my hand out. And so it's a natural curve upwards. Try and avoid lifting your hand and then pushing. Just look for this nice smooth curve. It was very nice in the shoulder. Nice smooth movement there, not straining. But it does have a stronger feel perhaps than the previous exercise. One more time. Now let your hands come down to a point just above your legs. Roll your fingers into a hollow fist. There should be space inside the fingers, and rotating your arms as you go forward. So your arm begins to act like a spring, as though somebody's pushing on it and then allowing it to release as your weight goes forwards. Doing the rotation right back into your shoulders again. And because of that, see if you can just make the same connection you made in Vision Spreads Its Wings and other movements that we've done, that when we do something in our shoulders, that is affected by what happens in chest and upper back and so on and so forth. Just making these connections through different parts of your body. Next time, when you get forwards, open your fingers, turn your hands out just a little bit more, unwinding all the way back, dropping down, feeding the fingers through, and then pressing forwards again. Do one more of these, coming back, and as your hands arrive above your lap, turn them palm down, turn to one side, go forwards again, pushing the hands through, turn around carefully with your back and back in. This is polishing the table. Always remember, I try and do these movements quite big. That isn't necessarily required and isn't necessarily the best way. Really what we're interested in here is feeling how the center part of our body, pelvis, hips and waist, do really play a pivotal role in these movements. Our shoulders are following that movement, and in their turn, they're moving our arms. One more round on each side. And then, when you come back to the central position, turn your hands palm up. Press gently down through feet and hips. Create an upward movement that pushes your arms up. Turn them over. Imagine a ball draped sort of underneath your arms, the arms draped over, and feel the contraction downwards through your upper body, pressing the ball down. Then you're pressing the ball down. Lifting up and pressing. One more time. With your hips going down into the chair, the feet going down and into the floor. Every time there's an expansion upwards or outwards. Turn your hands out, the wild goose. So with this image of the bird in flight, that's at all useful to you. The imagery can have a profound effect on our movements and on our posture and on body in general. But they can also prove to be a distraction. So we can take certain qualities from each movement, each image, but we don't want to sort of enter into some kind of dream state. And then parting the clouds. You do go forwards a little bit with this, sitting back in your hip and then the expansion upwards. Expanding from the center of your body, contracting back into it. Parting the clouds. Now this time, go back to the first of these movements, rooting down, gentle press down through feet and hips, expanding and contracting. At the end of the movement, turn your hands palm out, again pressing down through feet and hips, expanding into the wild goose and contracting. And then once again, this time with a slight movement of your weight, parting the clouds, expanding, yang, contracting, yin. So parting the clouds. So now, back to the little sequence, rooting down. Doing the expansion in belly and the lower back. Excuse me. The wild goose, belly and lower back expanding and doing the movement up into the solar plexus. Going forwards, belly, solar plexus, and then up towards the upper part of your chest. So we feel with these three movements, the progression that we're always looking for in the body, going back now to rooting down, which is that the movement starts in our feet, our legs, our center, starts with that connection to the ground and gradually builds upwards. It's quite difficult because there's a strong tendency that we all have to pay more attention to our arms and our hands. So this sort of resets the balance a little bit. If we look at this process, literally bringing our attention to the center of our body. And again, it's also the process that we would want to feel, that belly, solar plexus, chest expansion for our breathing. So again, this might be a good exercise if you want to focus on your breathing. So when we get to the part in the cloud section, again, just see how it feels when you take a breath in. But don't stick rigidly to a breathing pattern or method. We're just sort of informing ourselves about the relationship between posture and movement, how we're moving, and our breathing. Breathing should always be compatible with the other elements. Otherwise, you'll be creating a strain within your body. So just see if you can keep that sense of the movement building from below, feet, legs, belly, as we change, going into dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Take your time as you change from one side to another. Expanding, contracting. Wait until the contraction has finished. Let your attention move across to the opposite side, and then gently once again pushing down through feet and hips. Although the arm extends a fair way here, at the end of the movement, you should still feel slight curve there, that you could have moved a little bit further. Once again, preserving that space for the internal movement, the flow, the momentum, the energy of the movement. And one of the primary aims, especially from a point of view of health and well-being, would be to try and just cultivate that flow in a smooth, harmonious way. Do one more after this one. And then changing, bringing the hands around. Again, a gentle push down through feet and hips. The ground beneath us is literally the ground on which we stand and which we move from. So feeling that connection, kind of get a sense of us, the center of our gravity dropping through the ground. Helps with our movement, our stability, helps with the sense of the whole body moving. Feet, legs, back, belly, chest, solar plexus, all part of this movement. You can either think again of that gentle press down, or in some ways a somewhat more subtle, perhaps slightly more advanced way of thinking of this is focusing your attention here. Imagine there's a balloon. The balloon gets squeezed in and then it's released, and as it's released, the whole body expands upwards through the upper part of your body and your arms, but downwards through hips, buttocks, legs, and feet. This is a very useful way of moving, because we get into the habit of always making that connection to the ground, to our root. That really helps with stability, quality of movement. This time, extend one foot, keep the knees slightly bent, easing forwards, scooping the sea and looking at the sky. There'll be a slight stretch in the back of the leg, but not a full stretch. And the same in your back. It depends how far you go, of course. The main thing to think of here, though, is at this point, your hips are being pulled back into the chair. That brings your head up. And in turn, the head and the shoulders bring your hands up. Try and avoid, when you get down here, a sense of straining in your back or your neck to pull yourself up. Gravity will do the work for you if you let it. One more time. And then, once again, making a loose fist with your hands, pushing from your hip, angling forwards, grasping the tiger's ear. The shoulders go forward, but hands are behind, and then that opens the chest, which then contracts, bringing your hands up. In many ways, I think this is similar to what we feel in fisherman cast a net. The difference being, of course, that you, because your head is going upwards on a diagonal, it's tending to pull your arms in that direction. It's grasping the tiger's ears. Change over. So starting with scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Just follow what's happening in the center of your body. Notice how that influences your whole body. Also training ourselves to literally to be centered, to be grounded, so that we begin to establish a pathway to those parts of the body where we're most likely to experience a sense of being settled, of being rooted, being grounded in both mind and body. And then grasping the tiger's ears. Now, bring your feet back, a bit more complex. Bring your weight more back into your right hip. Hold the ball. Your right hand on top, your left hand underneath. Step forward, ease forward into part the wild horse's mane. And forward, settle into the front foot a little bit. Come back, settle back into your right hip. Place the foot down, move across into your left hip, feel your body turning, step out on the other side. So again, we can have a tendency to rush here, but those moments when we settle are an integral part of the movement. And in those moments, we bring our attention back to our center, hips and waist, our legs and our feet. Nothing complicated about that, whatever else is going on. So in the midst of this quite complex movement, we're actually beginning to find moments of stillness, quietness. Because ideally we would never lose them, but in practice, of course, we do. So don't worry if you're losing it a lot, because actually a key element here, I feel, apart from any kind of physical benefit of posture and so on and so forth, is that we're learning to regain that sense of being centered, of being rooted, however you label it, even in the midst of being quite busy. One more on each side. Good, and let your hands drop down. Once again, this little tapping exercise just before we stand up. So rubbing your hands together, tapping over your face. over your head and neck, shoulder and arm, to where the sensation, the tapping, trying to relax in those areas, changing the side, trying to relax in those areas where you feel that tapping. Belly and legs. This can have a very grounding quality as well. Let your legs, your hands rest and push your heels up to get the legs working a little bit before we stand up. And then circling around. And back the other way. Good. Okay. Now, if you want to stand, stand carefully. Feel free to sit again when you want to. Feel free to use chair or whatever means is useful to you if you think you want the extra little bit of support. And remember, that isn't just about if you need the support actually, because it's also sometimes it's quite interesting. Sometimes if I'm trying to work something out, I might put my hand on the wall just so I can concentrate on one particular movement. Feet should be hip width apart, and here your weight is forwards a little bit and your hips drop back. And then just letting gravity draw them down a little bit more until you feel yourself being pushed up. Try to drop your center of gravity through the ground. Try not to pull your belly in, to loosen in the lower part of your back so your pelvis can adjust to the change in angle as your hips move. Bring your hands around so you're cradling the ball and pushing up. And pressing down. At the bottom of the movement, changing again to the wild goose. Doing the expansion up into your solar plexus and the contraction down into the ground. And then parting the clouds up into the chest. If you feel the movement slightly differently, then let that be a concern. You can focus on these three areas of the upper body, then fine. But remember, we are trying to use these movements not only for their intrinsic value, which they do have, but also so that we can just train ourselves to become more aware of how small movements in the body build up into bigger movements. As always, it's the smaller movements that we're most likely to be able to influence through imagery, through just what you might call ideas, through an awareness of posture, instructions to the body, all aspects of intent. One more round. Good. And shake. So the more subtly we can apply our attention, the more subtly we'll be able to apply our intent. And we know from just everyday life that imagery and thoughts and so on and so forth can have a physical effect on the body. You walk past a billboard with a picture of, I don't know, some food on that you like or something like that, and maybe your mouth starts to water or your tummy starts to rumble. These are very small movements, but when they're combined, just like the bricks on the wall combine to make up a wall, they can affect the bigger movements. And this is very much how these art work. So attention, intention to the smaller movements, bringing about the small changes that lead to the bigger changes. It's a bit like the old saying, you know, look after the pennies, the pounds will look after themselves. And it's not to say that we can't affect the bigger movements directly, but mostly it's going to be through those smaller movements. So change your stance, turn one foot out, step forward with the left foot, and again, transferring your weight from full to empty in the legs. Try and avoid leaning, tilting over. Use your legs. So here, I exaggerate, and it is exaggerated, my knee's out of line, but that I've sunk down in this leg. If I think of going forwards, I'm going to strain to go forwards. If I think of just my leg expanding, then that will push me forwards. Same thing in the front leg, I sink down, I expand through the front leg, and it pushes me back. And I just allow myself to sink. So once again, there's that moment of sinking. And that way, my whole body moves as one unit. If I just think I've got to go forwards and backwards, suddenly I'm losing that alignment with the pull of gravity. This time when you go back, raise your front toes, get a feeling of dropping through your front hip. Have the front foot turned out slightly. Here, push your knee forwards, dropping through the back hip. Trying to keep your pelvis level. And this time, again, contract the back leg so it comes in, expanding, planting the foot back. And then on the other side. So it's not that we're not concerned with the upper body or arms and hands, but we are hardwired to be more aware of our arms and our hands than we are, say, of our legs and feet. And so we're sort of resetting the balance here. We're applying more attention to feet and legs at this point so that we're sort of hardwiring a pathway to maintain that attention. Raising your toes and your heel. At the moment, it's a deliberate, conscious thing. But if we do this enough, it will kind of sink into our unconscious. But it'll be there like a background noise. And this again contributes to our mobility and our stability, because it's all connected up with the connection to the ground, the root. And bringing the stepping in. And this time, just take a few steps through, either forwards or backwards. And then changing direction. Okay. Now we bring the arms and the upper body back into the movement. Have your right foot forwards. And the standing version of fisherman cast the net. Your arms following the movement, the weight of your body, via your back, via your belly and chest and shoulders. So try and be aware of the sensations of movement there. Like a wave flowing through your body. This time when you go into your back leg, let your arms drop down and then turn to your right. Swing the arms through a little bit. Wind blows the willows. expanding, contracting, expanding. Don't turn too far. Remember, moving within the space that's available, not straining. If you turn too far, get to here and I'm fine. As soon as I try more now, you can see my posture's going out of line. And I don't want my posture to go out of line. I want to expand that space, but I need to be patient for that to happen. Okay, and then on the other side. So left foot forwards. Start with fisherman cast the net. Feel the changes in particularly your upper body now, but don't lose a sense of what's happening in your feet, your legs, the transfer of your weight. And going forwards and turn into wind blows the willows. I'll just turn my front foot out. We're going to go into dragonfly skims the water, either forwards or backwards to start off with. Turn, bring the empty foot in, take the step, turn, bring the empty foot in, just rest the toes down. And having established that, if it's comfortable for you, and remember this isn't a competition, maybe just raising the leg. Be careful as you do this, you don't want it to fall, and realize that actually this action of bringing the leg up may cause you to sort of twist up and wobble around. So if it's doing that, then then just go nice and easy. Maybe just leave that until you've worked out how you can do that without straining. I'm going to change direction now. I'm going to bump into the table. Computer on. Dragonfly skims the water, hips sinking back, hanging over. Helping to just keep your weight down and your body upright. One more time. Bring your feet parallel. Shake out. Now go back to your chairs. So if something you'd like to do is to get into that movement, but it's difficult, don't be surprised because it is difficult. You can use something to support yourself, a wall, a chair, whatever. So you just concentrate on this. This movement can be one that's quite tight in your hip, as can this be. So when we do this, we might find ourselves doing this. Well, of course you're going to fall over at that point, or you're going to risk from falling over. So you use something for support, and you just start to gently play around with this movement. Don't do it too many times to start off with. It's quite strong. Looking for that way of moving in such a way that doesn't strain, moving within the space that's available, following the path of least resistance. Have those as your primary intents when you do that, so that you're encouraging yourself, encouraging your body to find that way of moving, and be patient with that. I mean, that was how I started to develop. I found I was going all over the place. Eventually, with that intent, softening the body, path of least resistance, filling the space. It was like, oh, okay, that's tight. If I do, and as you get more experience, you can work out the things that you need to do to get that kind of softening. So quite often I find, and I've found over the years of doing Tai Chi, that I've come across a movement. It might take me several months to work out, well, it looks impossible. How am I going to do that? How do they do that? No, I can't do that. And then you just work on it gradually, bit by bit, small movements, building up to influence and change the bigger movements. Always looking for these principles. I like the principle of the path of least resistance. Get used to doing that with one exercise, and it's almost like the body learns how to approach in that way, rather than the habitual straining and stiffening that we've often built up habitually. So now let your hands drop down. Feel the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders. Embrace tiger, return to mountain. As always, coming back to this basic original posture. So pushing your arms out. It will come round as though you're going to hold a ball against your chest. Drawing in, feel your hips dropping down, your shoulders dropping down, your arms following. Just coming back to that moment of settling again, mind and body. And then pushing out again. Embrace tiger, return into the mountain. One more round. And rest. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for looking in. So,
Thank you.